I remember when I just joined the Federation, there was a conversation that was very ripe about how do we know who we are? And we can only know who we are if we do profiling, if we do enumerations. We had a huge meeting, and all settlements had representation into the enumeration team. So we had this huge enumeration team, but then we said we first start by profiling the settlements. And that was beautiful. It was beautiful because I remember we would all go to one part of the city, all of us, and then would every morning divide ourselves. These ones, you will go to these settlements. These ones, you'll go to these settlements. And then we had agreed, this is what we're going to do. We're going to write the history. There are those that were going to talk about the history and record the history. There were those that were going to map. So we had these long tapes that were going to map the boundaries of the settlement. There were those that were quote-unquote security. It's not the conventional security as we know it, but there were those, especially the older men. Their role was to go and have conversations with anyone who would contest to the activities going on at that time. So I remember then we had the marshals. So we had those marshals that would walk with us. And if any contestation happens, then they were there to talk very politely and say, this is what we're doing. Began building the consciousness of communities. Even the communities that we were finding, everyone started owning this move. And you're like, yes, we need to know ourselves. We are tired of evictions. We need to know who we are. Who are we? We are the Federation. What's the Federation? Muungano and Wanavijiji. So part of the profiling then became a catalytic activity of being able to bring communities to join the Federation and to understand what are our values as a Federation. Why are we doing what we're doing? Why is it important for us to collect data? This was in 2002 and 2003, which pretty much went on, I guess, every year, year after year. And so we collected profiles and kept collecting these profiles. And we used to do it daily, I remember. And it was fun because we did it almost for 2 years. We also had the seasons of rain, the seasons of sunshine, the seasons of rain. So that was also fun in itself. I remember at one time, Jack and I going to convince the executive director at that time, Jane, that we need gumboots. We need boots for everyone. And she's like, what? In which budget? We're like, no, Jane, we need gumboots. But by the time Jane came to the Goretti, she went back to the office singing the song that gumboots are important. That profiling was so important. I remember it's one of the most beautiful documents ever produced because it was people's voices recorded by people themselves. I think for us it was being able to facilitate it to go on. And I think there's also a certain bond that happened within the Federation because people are coming to our settlement to do a profile. There'll come a time when we'll be in their settlement. So you'll come, you interact with where I stay, the environment I live in, my family and everything. So it became almost very intimate among the Federation that people began to know each other. So the Federation was very vibrant at that time, and it still will continue being vibrant. Vibrant in the sense that they were knowing each other, knowing their identity, both as who someone is within the Federation and what the Federation is about. There are stories that never come out when you're in a formal setting. But then when you're conducting these activities, is when people begin to tell their stories and they have these mind-blowing activities. I remember most of the women at that time telling us that they were part of another land struggle to save one of Nairobi's forest cover areas, Karura Forest. And they would walk from their settlements to go there and fight for that public space not to be grabbed. At that time, of course, with the laureate Wangari Maathai. And they would do that. And then they would tell us about part of another struggle they were part of. They were part of another struggle where I think they stripped themselves naked just to make a statement to government about evictions. It was a part of a history that people belonged to. People were activists, actually. And they were only too glad to be part of then, being able to bring it home, being able to then be defenders of the spaces they live in now. It was now easier for them to understand the federation and be part of it. There's a time when the struggle was among people that were equal in what they wanted. There were no pilots that were done to say that this is an example of what communities would want. But then came Huruma, and Huruma was just amazing in trying to even introduce a certain dialogue within policy arenas. But then over time, part of what was also maybe anticipated or not anticipated was that then that would also begin to change people, because at one point you have people that have gone through a struggle and also gotten security of tenure. And then you have other communities that have not yet gotten to that level. And that's because settlements are different. So it means that they're no longer the same level. These ones are more talking to policy issues because they've gone through it, they've gone through the struggle, they've saved, they've been able to achieve a dream or achieve what they wanted. But then you still have others who are still in that struggle. They're getting tired. Not tired of being in the struggle, but tired of the fact that their circumstances are not changing. They're becoming more complex. It's becoming harder to do daily savings. It's becoming harder to consolidate. And that's because more of the people that have come into the settlement, not everybody buys into the federation values of what the federation wants. Then also there's the other political reality of the fact that you have now more partners in communities. So then you have communities now more aligned to different partners. So you have a partner who comes, who's more human rights oriented and maybe, which is still good, but then there's the part of human rights, but then there's also the part of how are we changing our settlements. Federation is promising that, yes, part of what we're doing and we've been doing is part of human rights, but let's stick on this program. We'll get it. But then people tire. They tire from years and years of this and they're not saying anything. So you find different organizations also working in the same community, then begin to expose communities differently. So it becomes a challenge in consolidation. I remember one of the settlements when we were trying to do a sanitation project and we had an exchange to Kibera. And when we came back, it's when sometimes you begin to understand that sometimes exchanges, the idea is that you're going to expose and bring a positive report, but sometimes people go read different things. If for instance, you're a structure owner in a settlement and you've joined the rest to go for an exchange, your interest in that exchange is different from everybody else. Your interest is to see how will I benefit if this development is brought. So your interaction with the people there, you interact with the structure owners there to find out how does this profit your housing business by allowing these people to do this project. So sometimes you expose people, but then they come and become the hindrance to what you want because they've seen something that you haven't seen, or they've seen when they went on a different agenda.